All right, Darren, here we go. It is tournament time, and we know the Furman Paladins are dancing from the Southern Conference as a 15 seed heading to Philadelphia to take on the 2 seed UConn Huskies. So I don't care what the matchup is right now. It is all about excitement. It is about making the tournament, making the big dance. And these players, these coaches, I was there at Timmons Arena yesterday for the Selection Sunday show, and they didn't care. They just wanted to see exactly who they were going to be matched up with. And I would have to say, one of the things that I actually really enjoyed about CBS broadcast yesterday with the Selection Sunday show was the simple fact, Darren, that they didn't waste any time. There was no pleasantries.
They got right into it.
Yes, there was no, introductions. It was, let's get to the bracket. And that's what I'm all about. I hope there's other shows, other entities out there that take note in terms of this is how you do a selection show. You just jump right into it and get into the brackets.
No, completely agree with you. And I loved it because it was like you got a little bit of the pregame show, with Clark Kellogg, Wally Zerbiak, and Coach Pearl. But like when that selection show started, it was
it.
Here are our picks. And I love that because in years past, I feel like there's been this little build up for 5 or 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, guys, I get it. And I get we probably got to fill some time. But like, nobody really cares right now. We just want the picks. We'll take the analysis after the picks. But
Exactly.
like, let's get the picks, guys. Let's get the picks.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Certainly didn't have to wait very long.
Oh, well, that was the other thing too. I mean, it was crazy. It was almost anticlimactic in terms of how fast it was because it was that East region first, and it was boom, boom. You get down there to the 2 and the 15, and I had a good feeling it was going to be a 15 seed for Furman. A lot of the bracketologists had Furman sitting there at the 15 seed, and that makes the most sense in my opinion. I was going to be highly disappointed if they dropped Furman to a 16 seed. That didn't make any sense. But when you do look at it, I mean, it was close. I think Furman ended up being, the 61st team ranked there by the committee. So they almost dropped down to that 16 seed. And again, I think that's just predicated based on the Southern Conference this year, just how people view them overall as a conference. And then when you look at Furman's 10-8 record in the conference, it makes you scratch your head from that perspective. But we know if you dive into it, I mean, this was a Furman team that they're not playing like a 15 seed, and they were definitely not a 6 seed in the SoCon tournament. We talked about that, and especially when you look at the key injuries that they had throughout the course of the season. So once they were able to get things from the, righting the ship perspective, this is a dangerous team. Now, this is also a UConn team that is dangerous. And I know we had talked about looking at some potential matchups. Could it be a Houston or a Iowa State there on the 2 seed? Purdue is able to jump up to that 2 seed after they get the victory there in the Big Ten championship game against Michigan. Michigan State falls to a 3 seed, and I thought Michigan State still had a legitimate shot as a 2 seed. And from a matchup perspective, I think that would have been the most optimal matchup for Furman there against Michigan State. But they fall to that 3 seed after they got bounced early in the Big Ten tournament by UCLA. But when you look at this UConn team, I know people want to initially, Darren, look at, they're coming in, they're limping, they've lost 7 and 4, I should say, in their last 11 games. They get blown out in the Big East tournament championship game there against St. John's. But we do have to remember, this is a UConn team that at one point, they were 23-1. They had won 18 games in a row, and it was to a point where the narrative was like, oh my goodness, UConn is back. This is a team that's going to be able to maybe even secure the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament and be a heavy favorite to win the national championship.
Yeah, and you talk about the seeding piece too. I think Furman was a difficult seeding situation because we talked about it on a previous episode. They're not even really a 15 seed. They're better than a 15 seed.
There's no doubt.
But the problem is that the way the Southern Conference, like you said, ranked out was just unfortunately not real high this year, their conference record. And what people that don't follow the Furman Paladins closely don't understand is they did play a strong non-conference schedule early on. The problem is they had a lot of younger pieces that were learning on the fly that got thrown into the fire. So they lost games to High Point, to Northern Iowa, to Illinois State, teams that Troy, teams that I think if they were able to play later in the year, when their guys had kind of settled in, their younger guys had settled in, might have been really different. And if you start knocking off one or two of those teams, now do you put yourself in maybe a scenario where you're able to sneak in with a 13 seed?
That's right.
Because I do think this team plays much more on that 13 seed.
They definitely do. Yeah, I know this is a different team than that 23 team that upset Virginia, but this is still a talented team, and they're deep. And to your point, and I know we can play the what if game all day long with all of these different teams, these seeds. But can you imagine, what if Furman at the end of the season played that High Point team or played that Troy team, it was a close game there? This would be a potentially different type of situation for Furman because, to your point, I mean, they played extremely well down the stretch once they got things figured out and once they got their rotation in a much better spot based on the injuries also. And those freshmen were no longer freshmen, and we know that. They were able to hold on to the ball a little better. They still had some of their moments, but this was a different Furman team down the stretch of the season.
Very, very much so. But like you mentioned, they're up for a challenge with this UConn team that's incredibly well coached, as are the Furman Paladins. But tough team to scout on a short window as well, are the UConn Huskies because of their complexities on the offensive end. So, look, there's never going to be an easy matchup between a 2 and a 15 seed, right? But at the end of the day, everybody in this field, it's a good basketball team, right? Because you don't make this field unless you're a quality basketball team. And so I don't care your seeding, you're going to have to play well consistently to make a deep run in this tournament.
Yeah, no question. And even looking at this matchup, this is one of those things too, is how will the time of the game impact both teams? Because tip-off time is on Friday there in Philadelphia, but the approximate tip-off time is 10 p.m. So it's a late one, and I get it. I know these guys throughout AAU, the schedule that they're on, sometimes they're playing at 8 a.m., sometimes they're not tipping off until 11 p.m. I do get it, but this is an interesting type of situation. The anticipation of the game and sitting there waiting and waiting all day, and you're taking everything in. You don't play until Friday. So yes, that does give you a little bit of advantage from a scouting standpoint, but it also builds in that extra anxiety to a certain degree that the players who haven't really been experienced in the NCAA tournament, you don't know what to expect. And that's why I felt in 2023, I think it was the best thing for Furman to have that noon game there against Virginia.
Like the second or third game.
Yes, just to go ahead and get things going and not sitting there all day thinking about it and contemplating, okay, what do we have to do to win this game? And you start over-analyzing things, and then you have that paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, no, look, it's an interesting point. And we were, like I said, I think we were like the second or third game to start that tournament. And this is probably, I haven't looked, but I would suspect this is either truly the last game, or maybe there's one or two West Coast games that start around that same time. But it is interesting, right? Because late start or not, you're certainly not starting any regular season or conference tournament game at 10 p.m. And
no, you're not.
Even the fact of just sitting around for an additional day, you're sitting there all day. I mean, you're not eating pregame meal until 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, which I get is dinner time, but that's not a normal time for pregame meal under most circumstances, because you're playing at 7 p.m.
Yeah, players, coaches, guess what they love? Routine. You know it. That's the reality of it.
Yep. So it is a really interesting dynamic. Now, given that both teams are on East Coast time, it certainly, I don't necessarily see it as an advantage one way or the other for anybody. I think it'd be one thing if you had a West Coast team coming all the way east and it being 3 hours earlier on their body clock, or vice versa. If you had a late game on the West Coast, it'd potentially be in 9 or 10 o'clock on the East Coast, or later. But it is interesting to see, because it is a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
Extra day and a half, essentially, that you're sitting there wondering, pondering. At this point, you're just ready to go play, because at the end of the day, you can scout all you want. And look, that matters. I mean, it obviously matters. But within reason, like, you just want to go out and hoop right now. You want to go play, right? You're in a rhythm. You're playing well, hopefully. You're excited. Let's just go play. Like, we kind of know what we need to do to win, and we got to play well, right?
That's right.
Like, there are certain things we got to know that we got to stop, but we just got to go play well.
Hey,
and we want to play.
Yeah, I think Furman was ready to play on Tuesday after the SoCon championship, because they just wanted to keep going, or maybe get one day of rest there after the big celebration. But there's no doubt you want to carry that momentum, and I think that is definitely something here in this game that could be intriguing just in terms of the matchup, because Furman is coming in with a lot of confidence right now, especially how they finished the season. I know you had the 19-point loss there on the road in Cullowhee against Western Carolina, but how you finished the postseason there with the 3-game stretch in Asheville and finishing off ETSU in somewhat dominant fashion in that game. And so they're definitely playing with a lot of confidence. And Danny Hurley's come in and he's talked about basically the fragility of this UConn team right now, with their lack of execution, especially out on the perimeter, late game situations. And, that's typically not something that we see with UConn, just how well coached they are. Now, again, Danny Hurley's a different type of coach. So you're going to get the antics, you're going to get the craziness there on the sidelines. But there could be something to this in terms of how UConn is coming in and how they're going to be able to almost have the reset button, because at the end of the day, we know it. Regardless of how well Furman's playing right now, regardless how poor the perception is as far as UConn playing right now, that's all in the past. It's reset time. It's a completely new season heading into the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. Look, everyone's 0-0 now.
Yeah.
I mean, they just are. And it's interesting because some years you'll see teams that make deep runs into their conference tournaments. We're talking about the Power 4 schools now. And all of a sudden they get beat in the first or second round. Now, some of that's obviously matchups, but look, everyone's 0-0. And I think most teams are coming into this with a pretty good level of confidence, or at least if they weren't, the ability to kind of hit the reset button, like you said, and start fresh. So, in terms of Furman, can they maybe speed the game up a little bit? Because
that's right.
UConn certainly wants to play a little bit more of a half court pace game. I'd love to see Furman try to get into a scenario where they can get some really efficient and effective offense early in the shot clock before UConn is really able to sit down on the defensive end and set up their defense in the half court.
And there's the analytics support it too, that UConn, they play better at a slower pace game. We've seen that this season, and I think historically we've seen that from UConn, but especially the way their roster is built right now, the size that they have. But now Furman does match up size perspective really well, because you've got with Cooper Bowser there and Charles Johnson, so you do have some front court size that can match up with UConn. But you even look at Furman, and I know they're underrated analytically, and that's why they're sitting there at the 15 seed, but we both feel that that's not a true indicator of how good Furman can be and how dangerous they can be. And I think there's a lot of people that are looking at this matchup and saying, okay, this could be spicy in terms of, can Furman hit some perimeter shots, I think is going to be another key to this game. But, I look at just from the perspective of UConn and, the size that they do have, but it's more so on, can you defend their offense, and you've talked about it, just, I mean, it is action upon action upon action. And you
Yep.
talking about death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, it is screen by 1,000 screens by 1,000 screens. I mean, it is ridiculous when you watch the film how many times they just continue to use ball screens, elevator gates, all of the different aspects, Iverson cuts. I mean, they're all in their offense. And that's going to be very difficult for Furman to defend.
Yeah, I think an interesting piece in this offense for them is obviously Alex Karaban.
Yeah.
He's
Who's been there for
IQ player.
5,000 years, it seems.
I know it's crazy. It really is. But obviously he knows that system really well. He operates very well in it. They ghost him out of a lot of screens because he is a 3-point threat. So I think defensively Furman is going to have to be ready to be able to guard him on the perimeter and to make sure that they're communicating defensively for any sort of ball screen action or dribble handoff action that he's involved in, because they do like to ghost him out and pop him.
Yes.
And when I say ghost, that means essentially like a slip screen, right? So he will go up and pretend as though he's about to set a screen, and he will slip out of that before he sets the screen and pop to the 3-point line. But he's also an excellent passer. So to the extent that you can get him in short roll scenarios, and also in that pop, playing what we would call to the next action, where he pops, you get it to him, and they play to another action where he's involved in another dribble handoff and things of that nature. They are a good cutting team. UConn is, and they will play into out. They will work from the post and play out from there. But they have a very convoluted offense, and they will run a lot of we call misdirection. Which means they'll have something going on that looks like, if you haven't scouted it deeply enough or that you just don't know otherwise, that it looks like they're running something, but they're really just running that to distract you. And then something will be going on the other side of the floor that they're really trying to initiate.
They do on the weak side. They're setting screens on the weak side just to confuse you. And that'll throw the defenders off, because then you can't collapse because you're still worried about the action out there on the perimeter on the weak side. It creates all of that confusion.
It does. And what that does as well, Richmond, is it gets the defensive, especially weak side defense, it gets them moving, and they're focused more so on that action. And then there's not as much help side there for the action that is on the other side. And so, look, they're excellent at it. They have been excellent at it. That is certainly going to be a challenge for Furman defensively. But as we've talked about, this is a really underrated Furman defensive team, and it's a team that has the size to match up physically against almost anybody in the country, UConn included. But I really want to see how they guard Alex Karaban, because he is going to be playing on the perimeter a lot more than most 6'8", 6'9" guys that Furman has seen all year. And I do think that creates a mismatch for UConn.
It does.
On the offensive end.
Karaban has the second most three-pointers made on the team, and he's third in attempts. So this guy lives out on the perimeter, shooting almost 40% from beyond the arc. So it's going to be extremely difficult to defend that, because you're going to have to pull somebody out. And, who is that? Because you've got to be able to protect the perimeter out there and push them off the line. And then, again, you've also got the challenge of what I had mentioned, the elevator gates or the elevator doors, where you've basically got those two guys standing at the free throw line, and they have, an offensive guy, a guard, running through like a solo ball type of guy, or Demery there, and getting through those two screens, and then they close in together right there, and you can't get through it, and you got a wide open opportunity out on the perimeter. So for Furman, you're going to have to stay on the hip of those UConn guards to make sure you're not getting caught trailing, because you trail those screens, it's over, Darren. It's done.
And like Furman's going to have to be able to play defense for the entire shot clock. Now,
they are.
I'm not saying that UConn is a type of team that's going to milk the entire shot clock, but you have to be mentally ready to guard for 30 seconds, because they are going to put you through the ringer, and they're going to put you through a lot of stuff. And so you have to be very mentally sharp defensively. And, like you mentioned, look, I mean, Demery shoots 42% from three. Now there's some issues with how healthy is he coming in.
That's right.
but they've got pieces that can shoot, and they have good positional size as well. So it will be interesting to see how Furman defends this. But
the health of
the
Silas
line,
Demery could be
yeah,
interesting, not even from an offensive perspective, but also even from the defensive perspective. How well can he guard Alex Wilkins? Because I do think that Demery would be the guy that's going to be tasked slowing Alex Wilkins down.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I think one of the key pieces here to talk about is how UConn is going to guard Alex Wilkins, because we all know that Alex Wilkins is the engine that makes that team go, and he just helps make everything easier offensively. Certainly when Furman is executing well offensively, they've got everybody involved, and they're able to move it side to side and get defenses into rotations. But you're going to need Alex Wilkins to free himself up and be able to do what he's capable of for them to put the best performance forward there on Friday. I think personally, with UConn being a more aggressive defensive team, I would suspect that they are going to blow up ball screens, and they're going to try to get the ball out of Alex Wilkins' hands. And I think because of their size and length, they're going to be able to think in the back of their minds, like, we can rely on our help side here, that we can blow this screen up. And if we have to get into a rotation defensively, we can cover that. In terms of when he's involved in dribble handoffs, and even with shooters with dribble handoffs for the Furman Paladins, I would expect them to top lock a lot and really try to blow those up as well, so that they're just going to try to force Furman into kind of that second and third option where they're just not going to get easy looks.
That's right. I was wondering if they would have any drop coverage there for UConn, because I have seen that from them in the past. And if you're UConn, then I think you do have to be worried if you're dropping. Does that give too much space? Because Alex Wilkins then has the ability. He's got multiple options at that point.
100%. Look, Coach Hurley is a phenomenal coach, right? Yeah, I'm not going to. Exactly. I'm not going to sit here.
He knows more about coaching than I'll ever know.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell Coach Hurley what to do and what he should do. But I personally don't like drop coverage against this Furman team, because I just think it allows Alex Wilkins to be able to operate in space. And we've seen it. He is very, very dangerous in open space. And when he gets you, like you said, on his hip, and I don't care. Look, I don't care about the size that UConn has. He gets downhill. He gets into space. He makes things happen. He's a high IQ player. He understands his offense now, and he's going to be able to spray and make good decisions and make big-time plays. I think the key here, frankly, no matter if you're UConn or if you are another mid-major opponent in the Southern Conference or elsewhere, to me, get the ball out of Alex Wilkins' hands and make somebody else make a play and make a decision. So to me, I think you blow screens up that he's involved in, because at a minimum you're going to disrupt him, and even if you don't get it out of his hands, you're going to make him make some retreat dribbles, and he's just not necessarily going to be able to get a corner on you to make a play happen. Now, look, that's easier said than done. Again, I don't care for UConn or if you're somebody else, but to me, I don't like drop coverage against this Furman team, because I think if you drop, they're smart. They have guys that can beat you from a multitude of angles, and they have been shooting it very well. And look, I know the percentages were not there all year, but I think this team is healthy, and I think they're in a rhythm, and they've got guys that are 40+% three-point shooters. And I'm not going to buy everything regressing to the mean right now. I genuinely believe this is closer. What we saw in Asheville is closer to what I think this Furman team really is if they were healthy this year. So I don't like drop coverage overall against this Furman Paladins team.
No, I agree. And especially if you can have the opportunity with the Tom House, Asa Thomas, if they can be hot. And again, we know it's the ultimate equalizer, but you're going to have to make sure that you're not just hunting threes, that you're hunting efficient threes if you're the Furman Paladins. That's a key differentiator here, is that they have to be efficient within the frame of the offense there. And I think also you're going to have to do a phenomenal job on the defensive glass for Furman. You cannot give up offensive rebounds and second chance points, but that's where UConn, that's one of their strengths. I mean, they're one of the top
they get on the
15
glass
in the country. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a team that they love offensive rebounding. So for Furman, one, to eliminate or to reduce second chance opportunities and extra possessions for UConn, but more importantly, getting the defensive rebound and then trying to get out in transition and try to get to the corners. And that's where Asa and Tom House have lived. And that's what we saw in the SoCon tournament, getting out in transition, getting to the corner threes, and that's where they can make their hay.
And look, we've talked about it. I think Furman has the size to be able to limit if they box out and they play aggressively on the defensive glass. They are not going to be outmatched from a size perspective. So my hope is that they can maybe not neutralize. Maybe neutralize isn't the right word, but limit the offensive rebounding opportunities for UConn.
You're not going to slow. You're not.
They're going to have to.
Yeah, stop UConn from getting offensive rebounds. They're just too big. And
it's what they do. I mean, it's part of their culture. There in Stores, like they are an offensive or rebounded oriented team. It matters to them. Like from an analytics perspective, that's part of their identity. But like you mentioned, if you can limit that, and then you can get out and get into actions and get into stuff either in complete transition or too quick early in the shot clock before UConn is set, that is a real advantage and something that I think Furman can take advantage of in this game, because you mentioned some of the things that UConn ranks highly in. They're number one in the country in blocks per game, and they have really, really good rim protection, right? So it is going to be a challenge, no matter Furman's size and as well as they have operated that offense, especially in Asheville. UConn has elite rim protection.
Yes, they do. Terrace Reed Jr., watch out.
So the more you can get stuff at the rim or in transition prior to UConn being able to set up defensively, I think the higher percentage you're going to be able to shoot. And you've mentioned this before. Furman, very, very good 2-point percentage field goal, especially at the rim this year. I think it's one thing that they excelled in all year. And Alex Wilkins being one of the main reasons for that, getting downhill and getting Cooper Bowser involved in actions there where he becomes a very, very significant rim rolling threat.
No doubt that rim rolling threat, that is significant, and Furman's going to have to be able to try to exploit that. As you talked about, Furman shooting 59% from 2-point field goal this season, and Bowser shooting 77%. So we know he's getting to the rim quite a bit. But on the flip side, that's where UConn excels in terms of their defense. They're one of the top 15 in terms of 2-point field goal percentage defense, holding teams to roughly 45%. So we're going to see a strength-on-strength type of situation. And this is going to be now a real test for Cooper Bowser. Can he continue what we saw in the Southern Conference tournament, especially in that game against ETSU? That little righty hook that he has, there on the low block. If he can do that, if he can get over Reed, if he can get over Eric Ryba there with that righty hook, that's going to be significant, because that's going to allow the defense is going to have to collapse on him. Do you double team him? And if they do, then can he kick it out, and can he have some of the guys hit from the perimeter?
Yeah, and I think two X factors to that on the offensive end. One, I think Charles Johnston knocking down a couple threes early,
big time,
could be very big, right? Because you can at least pull somebody away from the basket, and I think it puts a little bit more focus than, okay, we're not necessarily going to have, now we've got a big that we are absolutely going to have to account for on the perimeter. And then the second thing is, with that is, and this is twofold, right? Can you potentially go with a smaller one quote unquote big lineup and be able to guard UConn defensively better? But the flip of that then is, can you then have a mismatch offensively where you've got somebody that Alex Karaban is going to have to guard that maybe you can exploit a little bit? Look, I don't know if that's going to be able to happen, but one critique on Alex Karaban over the years has been his ability to move laterally at an elite level. Can you get a Cole Bowser maybe, or a Ben Vanderwall, a guy that still has some size to be able to bang with bigger players, But then offensively, Ben being a great cutter, Ben being able to put the ball on the floor and potentially attack Karaban, or similar with Cole Bowser doing the same thing. I'm interested to see if you can exploit that a little bit if you're the Furman Paladins offensively.
That's right, because I think there's something to be said, with like Ben Vanderwall being able to get into some type of action and try to, get some penetration, try to get some opportunities of getting to the rim, and not so much just to be able to score. Yes, obviously you'll take that, but it's more to get the defense to collapse and to get them in some type of rotation. And that's going to be imperative. And so if you can have that opportunity of exploiting that, that'll be a big factor for Furman, because you're going to have to be able to make some plays on the offensive side. You're just going to have to. You're going to have to make some shots, and it's going to be from the perimeter. But when I look at ultimately this matchup, here's kind of some of my keys for this matchup. It's the blender, so to speak, with UConn and Furman being able to defend the blender. And I'm talking about all the screens and what we talked about with all of the different layers of action there for UConn's offense. And that's why you're going to have to stay on the hip of the cutters out there, and you can't foul. There's no doubt you cannot foul. UConn has 4 guys that shoot over 80% from the free throw line. So you don't want to put them on the free throw line. And then also the battle of interior efficiency. Again, we've talked about it. Furman is elite with 2-point field goal percentage. And now we also know that UConn, they can defend the 2-point field goal. So how's that going to play out? And then can you exploit the perimeter? We just talked about it. I think that's going to be a huge situation for Furman. You're going to have to be able to knock down the 3-point shot. I think Furman's going to have to shoot close to 40% and maybe even just north of 40% to be able to win this game, because we know that 3 points are more than 2 points. We do know that. So you're going to have to be able to do that. And maybe it's like 12 3-pointers that they're going to have to hit to be able to win this game. And then also second chance points. Again, this is a huge monster for UConn. They're so good on the offensive rebound. And then going back to how Furman's coming in here with momentum, confidence, and is UConn, can they quickly flip the switch, so to speak, and gain the momentum that we saw at the beginning of the season? And again, where at one point they were 23-1 in the country, and it was almost a no-brainer that, hey, they're going to walk right through into the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, what they finished, I think 7-4 down the stretch.
Yeah, 7-4 in their last 11 games.
Yeah, so obviously not necessarily playing their best basketball, but I mean, as well a coach team as there is in the country. Coach Hurley's been there before. He knows how to handle these situations. They will certainly be prepared and ready to go. And man, I mean, talk about a tough side of the bracket. That East
my goodness.
Region is a bear.
It's a gauntlet. You've got Duke. We know that actually go to be in Greenville. So that's great. Then you've got St. John's, you've got Kansas, Louisville. Hey, don't sleep on South Florida. That's for certain.
I completely agree.
Michigan State, UCLA, they might surprise some people. Although I think Central Florida is going to beat UCLA there in that 7-10 matchup. And
they're underrated.
They are.
Coach Dawkins has done a really good job.
Yeah, he definitely has. And then obviously we're talking UConn right there. So, I mean, you've got some of the elite teams in college basketball, even from an historical standpoint, also there in that East region. So I know Duke's got to be sitting there saying, what the hell? We're the number 1 overall seed, and give us these teams in this region? Crazy.
Like, I don't want to sound dramatic, because I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I have to think, to your point, like, I mean, this is one of the hardest regions I've seen in years. I mean, you have 4 blue blood programs in this bracket, in this region.
Just that region alone. I know.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mean, you've got easily 5 teams that wouldn't, hey, they come out of this thing. I'm not going to be, whoa. They won that region.
That's right. And especially with Duke's health right now, I do still think that Duke's probably going to come out of that region. But with their health, Caleb Foster and Gongba out, that will be interesting. And we did see that they were able to finish things off there against Virginia in the ACC tournament. And it was more of, Caden Boozer rather than Cam
Yeah.
Boozer that had a fantastic game. But definitely a tough region. But at the end of the day, when I look at this Furman UConn matchup, I know there's been 15 seeds since 1985 that have been able to upset a 2 seed. And don't forget about that Florida Gulf Coast team that was able to make a run out of Philadelphia as a 15 seed. So maybe there's a little magic there in Philly for the Furman Paladins. But at the end of the day, I do think this is going to be a UConn team that's probably just going to be too much down low and too much for the Paladins to handle. I do think Furman's going to play really well in this game and keep it close for a period of time. But I'm just worried just in terms of what you talked about, the physical and the fatigue aspect of having to play such stellar defense for 40 minutes because of the complicated and complex offense with all of the cutting action there for UConn.
Well, hey, I'll say this: last time the Paladins were in Philadelphia, they knocked off the defending national champion Villanova Wildcats.
That's right. Yes, it can happen.
So
yeah,
hey, so they're 1-0, and they're 1-0 in their at least their last trip up to Philly that I'm familiar with. So, look, obviously going to be a really tough game. I mean, it's a tough game for anybody facing UConn. I mean, it's a team that, when they're right, is absolutely a national title contender. So, my hope is that this one's a fun one. I think Coach Ritchie will have those guys prepared. I think I think it's a mature group.
Yeah.
They will scout
even though it's
UConn
a young
very
group,
well.
they are mature, Darren.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
They are. And look, I mean, when we talked to Tom House last week, it seems as though they've really had a advancement in some of the leadership over the last couple weeks. Not that they didn't have any before, but I think there's been some voices that maybe have stepped up, or that just for whatever reason have clicked more than maybe they did earlier in the year. And so, look, my hope is that this one is a close one, and I know Furman's going to be prepared to get this done. But I mean, it's always a challenge with a 215. I mean, it is. It's going to be tough, but my hope is that the Paladins can come out and make this a fun one.
Oh, hey, I would love it, and I know there's a lot of Furman fans that are asking me to pick UConn here because they feel it's a reverse psychology, feel that it's a jinx if I pick against Furman wins. So there you go, Furman fans. So that is my breakdown there. And we'll have a lot more coverage for the NCAA tournament right here on SoCon Fast Break. So make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it might be, wherever you get your podcasts, including the iHeartRadio app. And our subscribers, they're growing. So keep it going, fans.
Yeah.
If you want SoCon Hoops coverage, by all means, hit that subscribe button because we've got more content coming. We'll do a full recap of the season, and then we'll be heading into the offseason, the summer, and be able to talk about the transfer portal, how teams are going to be constructed coming into the next season, all of that. But I did want to take a quick moment also just to talk about ETSU and their regular season conference championship there and not making the NIT this year. And there was hopes that maybe ETSU could squeak in there, but you had some other competition like a Winthrop team, which also didn't make it, out of the Big South. And so I felt this was one of, even with a lot of teams declining, some of the high major programs declining to go to the NIT, I just felt there was a lot of good teams in college basketball, Darren, and it was just a tough situation, almost a timing situation for ETSU that they didn't get picked because there were so many good teams out there.
There were, and it's tough because, you had a fair amount of number one seeds, and frankly, in higher rated leagues that lost in the conference tournament. And, that is ultimately gonna hurt you from an NIT perspective. Now, philosophically, I'm disappointed that the NIT got rid of the guaranteed, the automatic bid for the regular season conference champion.
No question. I know
because I think.
Yeah,
I just think that you should be rewarded.
Yeah, I know they still technically have it, but they've also included a criteria that you have to be the regular season champion and finish in the top 125 of the net, and
something
extra
like that.
criteria changes things.
Well, it does, because if you're a mid-major, basically probably anything from probably 14 down in terms of league ranking in Division One, you're probably just not going to be able to have enough games that are going to be
that are
going to allow you.
Because also nobody wants to schedule you in the non-conference, so you're at a disadvantage because you can only grow so much through your conference games. I mean, it's a cycle that each team's beating each team.
Absolutely, which is a whole nother talking point for me in the Miami of Ohio Redhawks. I think, look, you can talk about their strength of schedule, but I also think that it has been something that's been well documented who they tried to play this year, and the amount of time of Power Four teams they tried to play. I just think to put them in the first four after they go 31-0. I know the first four technically is part of the NCAA tournament, but
okay, we need to talk about this.
Because I don't feel like it's quite the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. I'm sorry. 1985 is when the tournament expanded to 64 teams, and that has been the bracket all the way up until 2001. Then they added the 65th team to play in the play-in game, and the winner of that game would then ultimately be in the 64 bracket. And then in 2011, that's when we went to the 68 teams and the first four, but it's still play-in. I'm sorry. I know the semantics are saying that, okay, you've been selected, so it's not like you can go to the NIT or any other postseason tournament. I get that. And so you can say that you were selected for the NCAA tournament as a 67th or the 68th team selected. I totally understand the semantics behind it. I do.
Yeah.
But you have to play yourself into the 64 team bracket. And I'm sorry, Miami deserved to be in the 64 team bracket. I watched them live in person. I was on the call for the Miami UNC Asheville game there in UNC Asheville. And Darren, they are good. Now, SMU will probably beat them, but it wouldn't surprise me if Miami showcases just how good they are against SMU. But I'm telling you, they deserve to be in the 64 team bracket. And I still contend. I'm going old school. I know I'm old man, get off my lawn from that perspective. And I love the field of 68. You know I do. Jeff Goodman, Rob Doster, all the guys. We've had Rocco Miller from mid-major, on SoCon Fast Break. Love all of that. But it's 64 teams as part of the bracket. That's my soapbox, and I'm standing on that soapbox, and I'll carry that flag all the way to the mountaintop. It's 64 teams is the bracket, not 68.
I'm with you. Like, there's just something, and now I've not played in one. I've not played or coached in one of those games, but there's just something that doesn't quite feel like the NCAA tournament. And to your point, it's called the play-in.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The NCAA, they want you to no longer use play-in. They want you to say first four because they're saying that it's not a play-in game anymore. But we were conditioned starting in 2001 that it was a play-in game. So now all of a sudden the first four, you're not playing in to the 64 team bracket. Well, of course you are. You have to win that game to be able to be in the 64 team bracket. So the semantics still say it's a play-in game. So I'm a firm believer in that. So I'm buying what you're selling there.
No, for sure. And I think this is a deeper conversation that we can probably talk more about in the offseason. But I think that there's something that we have to do. And look, the committee's got a tough job, man. I'm not trying to call the committee out. But you've got a lot of these mid-major programs that have exceptional years, but maybe they get beat in their conference tournament. And I know there's a lot of analytics, and I know that they are technically looking at the eye test to a degree, but these good mid-major programs, look, there's a lot of smart coaches out there.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to schedule Miami when they know how good Miami of Ohio is. Like, it was hard for us to schedule games at Furman because people knew there was no point to play us.
That's right.
We're going to go play we're going to go play a bottom 50 team and know that we're probably going to beat them by, maybe even less than a bottom 15. We're going to go play a bottom 20 team and we're going to beat them by 40 and we're going to pay them their money. But like, we're good. Like, why would we want to bring Miami of Ohio in? Why would we want to bring the Furman Paladins in? Why would we want to bring High Point in? Right. Like, it doesn't help us with our ranking if we're a high major, but it really hurts the mid-major because they can't get a signature win.
That's right.
On their schedule.
Yeah.
And it's a lose-lose for these teams that are at the mid-major level.
Yeah. That's why I think the mid-majors need to go ahead and start playing themselves more often and focus on just playing mid-majors. And yes, if whatever you can do to get, one of those high major type of programs, but I do think there's something, about the mid-major programs playing themselves and playing up when you can. I do think there's some advantages from that standpoint. But yes, that's a topic for another discussion. This is all about the Furman Paladins as the 15 seed taking on the 2 seed UConn Huskies on Friday. Approximate tip-off time there in Philadelphia, 10 p.m. Eastern time. So that could be intriguing. I know a lot of Furman Paladin fans get ready for a late night to see how that plays out. And hey, right now it doesn't matter. As John Rothstein would say, we sleep in May. This is all about conference tournament action leading into the NCAA tournament, and we'll rest once the season is over. But don't you rest on subscribing to SoCon Fast Break right there on YouTube. It's easy. We're trying to get as many subscribers as possible. It doesn't cost you anything. So just help us out from that perspective. And also don't forget about Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts, including the iHeartRadio app, as we'll have more coverage as the tournament is getting ready to start. It's a magical time of the year. There is
one shining moment, baby.
Right, let's go. One shining moment.
Furman's going to be in it. Furman is going to be in one shining moment no matter what, and that is special in itself. So congratulations to the Furman Paladins. Really, really proud of what this group has done.
Yes, and representing the Southern Conference in a fantastic way. Until next time, may all your jumpers hit nothing but the bottom of the net.